Welcome to episode one of the Gooner Fanzine Arsenal Women podcast. I'm Freddie, Cardy, the Arsenal Women reporter for the Gooner, and I'm joined by one of our writers, Daisy Goodhand. Daisy, busy couple of days, busy day this one. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very good, thank you. Very excited to get this first podcast episode out, and yeah, I'm sure we've got lots to talk about this past week, so I don't think we'll run out of things to talk about here.
We certainly won't. We've got a lot on our list. But just to explain a bit more about the podcast, obviously we've been putting out a lot of Arsenal women content this season for the Gooner fanzine. We've seen the launch of the first ever digital fanzine committed to Arsenal women. And now this podcast. We're aiming for sort of 25-minute, half an hour episodes. Once a week, myself and Daisy, regular weekly episodes, just talking all things Arsenal women, straight to the point. Perfect listen for your commute to work, your commute to a game, even your lunch break, and or if you're sitting in the stands at half time. Hopefully this will be something to keep you entertained, and throughout the summer months, obviously when there's not much Arsenal football, Daisy, hopefully this will be quite nice for us to keep us busy as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're going to miss the football because it's been such a crazy season, ups and downs, and then obviously, yeah, no women's football really apart from the Olympics over the summer. So lots to talk about, and I'm sure we'll be fine.
Well, just this week alone, we've had Vivianne Miedema leave the club at the end of the season. She's been since joined by Sabrina D'Angelo and Kaylan Marckese. Today, I should say, we are recording this on the Wednesday. By the time this is out, goodness knows what might happen. But we should make that clear. And in between that, we've had news that Arsenal women will be moving to the Emirates Stadium as their home from next season, while still playing a few games at Meadow Park. Let's start then with probably the biggest news. I mean, it's not often that a stadium move can be overshadowed by one player leaving the club, but Vivianne Miedema is a true Arsenal legend, Daisy. I guess first we need to celebrate just how incredible she's been with Arsenal before we get into the move itself. I mean, there won't be another Vivianne Miedema again at Arsenal. There simply won't be.
That's very true. Yeah, top class player. Everyone knows she's a world class player. Obviously started off her career at Arsenal a little bit more positively. Unfortunately, then she finished it off, not obviously by her own fault, and obviously the ACL injury was gutting for her as well. But if we think back, especially those newer fans who were joining um, the Arsenal community, the Arsenal getting into the Arsenal women, they won't know as much the 17-18 season Viv when she was at her best. But
Hmm.
truly, I think if you just type it in on YouTube and watch those highlights, you really will see what a player she was and probably still is. And the most, I guess, the most like emotional thing about it is as a fan is her not getting that last season to be as good as it was when she first joined Arsenal. Obviously, due to the injuries, she came back from the ACL, and then obviously she was injured again. Everybody, I think, when we was all at that Liverpool game and she scored that comeback goal as well, like that was just a sign of what we thought was just Viv returning, and we never would have saw this coming at that point. But yeah, most people obviously know what a fantastic player she is, and she is an Arsenal legend, and she will be truly missed at the club.
From a tactical perspective, when you get players like Viv Miedema, it's quite hard to categorize them into one position, isn't it? You can't say she's a number nine, can't say she's a number 10, because she is one of those players that sort of transcends that positional ability, really. She's such a unique player and a unique character as well. Why do you think it's not quite worked for her under Jonas Eidevall, certainly this season, but previous seasons as well? And how do you think a club in the future will look to get the best out of her?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you look at especially discussions in recent times, it's this idea of Jonas's system and his determination to play this system, no matter who the players are that come in, and sort of try and find ways to fit these new players into the system that he's got. He's very had a lot of discussion about Russo as well, about what position she's best to play in. And I think the thing is with Viv, obviously she started out as a number nine. And then obviously she doesn't play traditionally how Jonas would want a number nine to play in that system. Then obviously the discussion was about a number 10, and I think it's just the case of he doesn't see her fit into the team. Obviously, we noticed like at times he was playing her on the wing. I think that isn't her best position, and it's just a case of unfortunately she's not the right player for the system that he wants to play. I think sometimes you can see managers sort of try and fit these players into their teams no matter what. And potentially that's what we thought would happen with Viv. Obviously, that hasn't been the case, and therefore that's maybe why she's not had the best time under Jonas. But it is disappointing because obviously what a great player she is to not be able to get into that team.
Reportedly, then Miedema not being offered a new contract by Arsenal, and I think that's possibly the bit of news that's maybe angered fans the most. Would you agree? The fact that Arsenal haven't looked to entice Miedema into a few more years at the Emirates, and the fact that they're just happy to let her move on.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously the narrative was painted one with the announcement that this was the end to the story, that they seemed the perfect end to the story. Whether that's true or not, obviously the fans haven't seemed to agree with that, and I can understand that frustration. She's obviously not had the best season, like I mentioned previously, and she's not been able to get a good run like in the side. And I think when you have a player who has played for Arsenal for so long, it is about managing that and just giving that player the respect that they deserve. Obviously, with her being WSL all-time top goal scorer, that plays into it too, doesn't it? Because it's not only is she loved by the club, she's played her part. You know, the season that Arsenal won the WSL, Viv was the top goal scorer. She played the massive part in that side, and it's just. I think it's just the handling, the way that they've sort of painted it as like, yeah, like this is the end of the story. But I think we were pretty clear that, or what has been said is that Viv did actually want to sign a new contract or was open to discuss it. And the fact that it's come across as Arsenal just haven't really given her that chance, it just looks really bad on their behalf, because the way that you manage these things with your best players is kind of really important to the fans, to the club, and obviously to the player as well.
How do you think it's going to be on Saturday? I mean, we've got more departures than Viv. You're going to be there likely as a fan, hopefully as a journalist. We're obviously trying to get you into the press box, and hopefully we'll be able to bring people more news on that. Hopefully you'll be there sat next to me on Saturday. But it's obviously going to be a couple more departures as well as Viv. But it's going to be quite a strange atmosphere because, we had last season, we had Rafa obviously leave at the end of the season. There was a really nice atmosphere around the place. Obviously, Arsenal had secured Champions League football. And I think fans understood obviously why Raffaele moved on. She wanted to go out to America. She wanted a new challenge, and it did end on good terms. Do you think this will be quite different in the stands around Meadow Park on Saturday?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is because of divided opinion amongst the fans and amongst the entire like Arsenal women's community. You've got one side who is sort of agreeing with the decision that's made, or maybe some of the decisions that were made with D'Angelo. Obviously, that is a different scenario to Viv, but I think the majority of fans, from what I've seen on social media and talking to different people, are upset with the way that it was handled. And obviously now that is always going to be reflected on the manager, whether it was up to him or not. And he obviously maybe will be facing some of the annoyed fans on Saturday as well. So it could be a really interesting atmosphere. You've got the people who just want to give give the players the best send off possible. Obviously, Viv, especially legend to the club, and then the fans who maybe are going to be going there a little bit, wary of Arsenal's season. Has it really been what we would have expected? Are we disappointed in a way? Obviously, last season was kind of different, like you said. So it's just a mixture of emotions at the moment, and how that plays out on Saturday will be really interesting.
Jonas Eidevall's pre-match press conference, 10:30 a.m. on Friday. There'll be a fair few people tuning into that one. I think it'll be quite a long one in terms of questions. One thing I'd like to touch on with Miedema is it just feels like something of a missed opportunity for Arsenal. Obviously, she had these offers from Barcelona and PSG sort of at the end of 2021, 22, and obviously her head was slightly turned. She said she wanted to fight for trophies of Arsenal, stay at the club instead of going to one who obviously regularly compete for trophies, such as Barcelona. How frustrated do you think she'll be to have not really been able to do that? Obviously, she was involved in one of the Conti Cup triumphs. The ACL injury is obviously out of Arsenal's hands, and we've all seen just how hard she worked to come back from that. And I think she and Beth should get some real praise for the documentary, because I think they and the work they've done to try and build on research for ACL injuries, I think was really important, and massive hats off to them for that. But it's just not worked out since the end of 2021-22. Miedema she really put pen to paper. She remained loyal with Arsenal. Do you think she'll be frustrated just the way it's panned out?
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, I think she'll be aware the injury, the way that it's gone in general hasn't been the way that she wanted it to, and she'll be aware that most of that is out of everybody's hands, like you say. But I think the real thing that she will be frustrated about probably is the way that the contract situation was handled. Obviously, yeah, when she re-signed that contract, that was a massive, massive positive news for Arsenal and obviously for her as well. Obviously it's gone different. These things happen in football. It's not all fairy tales. But I do think the way that it's been handled after she committed to Arsenal, and now they've sort of just said, well, this is how it ends, and they've taken that out of her control, and that's not probably what she would have expected. I think most people were looking at the potential, potentially optimistically, but looking at the potential that she would have stayed at least to get back from injury and obviously see how that went. I think as well, like depending on where she goes after she leaves Arsenal, that could also be extremely negative for Arsenal, especially if she stays within the same league. If she goes to a rival, like not like you would look at that and blame her because it's not been her fault that this has happened, but it'll be a missed opportunity for Arsenal definitely because you're basically we know what Viv can do, and when she gets back to her best, which I believe she will, it's only going to come back to haunt Arsenal, especially if they're playing against her in the future.
So just one final one then. Do you think the success, if you like, of Miedema moving on will be only determined maybe in 1 or 2 seasons? If you go somewhere like Manchester City, I mean, it'll be a absolutely frightening front line. But maybe if she continues to maybe not get back to full form, if she maybe isn't used effectively by a manager, how do you think it can pan out for Arsenal to say we've made the right decision?
That's an interesting one, yeah. And I think a lot of people were talking about obviously Manchester City being the team that were interested in signing her. That is an interesting one in itself because where does she fit into that side? Obviously, Jill Roord also suffered an ACL injury and therefore she hasn't been able to play her
Mm.
typical like number 10 position. So that definitely plays into it. Will she come in to that side and sort of have that position for now? Obviously, you've got Bunny Shaw. I don't think anyone will be thinking that she'll be out of the the starting 11 anytime soon. The form that she's on. I think it also doesn't it depend on how Manchester City do their business over the summer in terms of who they let go and who they bring in if alongside Viv. But I think Arsenal will be thinking in their heads that it will play out for them to for Viv to not go straight back into full form to the way we saw her originally when she joined Arsenal, and they'll be able to, like you say, play that out as we did the right thing for her at the time. I think the worst thing for Arsenal would be if she went straight into that City side and straight away got back to the form that we know that she can get into, because then obviously the fans would be valid in the points that they made when she left Arsenal.
Let's go into some good news, shall we? I said to you
Yes.
before we went onto the podcast that there's enough clever people at Arsenal to time some of these announcements quite smartly. And on Tuesday, we heard the news that the club will be moving to the Emirates Stadium as their main home from the start of next season. Let's go through the details. Firstly, an increased 8 WSL games will be hosted at the Emirates. And if Arsenal qualify for the group stages of the Women's Champions League, all home group games, so that'll be 3 group games, and then any home knockout ties in further rounds. Arsenal did do this last season when they qualified for the Champions League, the group games, and then obviously we can all remember that Wolfsburg sellout in the semi-final. The remaining home matches will all be played at Meadow Park, home of Boreham Wood, of course, who are now in the National League South. That's got a capacity of 4,500. It obviously regularly sells out now for Arsenal women fixtures. And just finally, if Arsenal fail again to qualify for the Champions League, all 11 WSL home games will be hosted at Emirates Stadium. All of the fixtures and the games that will be played at the Emirates will be confirmed later this summer. I understand the WSL fixtures are up in July. Daisy, as a fan, quite hard not to like this decision. Surely, it's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. If we completely take away the timing, like you say, of the announcement, this is absolutely huge for Arsenal. But I don't think anybody would look at this and not expect it, which is really good because you've seen the how far that we've come this season. I think what potentially might have been one of the key deciders was that Leicester City game at the Emirates, 40,000 or four, I can't remember the exact number, but around 40,000 tickets sold for a fixture that most people were looking at and thinking we wouldn't sell as many as we did. You know, absolutely fantastic sellouts. Some great games played at the Emirates, and also some great football played at the Emirates. You know, the results that we've had, barring a couple of results at the Emirates, have been absolutely fantastic. And it's just, yeah, the news in itself is absolutely great. I think we did expect it. Obviously, now we're getting to the point where Boreham Wood just isn't, like you say, enough for the Arsenal fans. We've seen the demand for this last game of the season. It's been absolutely crazy from a fan perspective, trying to get tickets. So many people want to be there.
Mm.
And obviously, hopefully, the Champions League goes better for us as well, because that, like that, take an example from that Wolfsburg game, I think it'll only continue to be of that standard every single time that we announce a fixture at the Emirates.
Easy for fans to forget as well just how much of a pull this is for players who are maybe thinking about making Arsenal their next destination, to think they're going to have more games at the Emirates, to see it as the home of the club rather than Boreham Wood. You know, when you look at teams like Man City, Man United, who don't really play as many games at their men's stadiums it is a big pull, you know, and players' heads will hopefully be turned by this, even though we have got all of this transfer talk by Arsenal. This can only be good news, I think. All round, we've seen players, you know, the likes of Emily Fox come over, you know, see a game at the Emirates and decide that's the move they want to make. And Arsenal fans, I guess, should be quite proud of themselves. They're effectively helping out with some of these transfers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think obviously with what's, you know, happened this season in terms of maybe results not going the way we would have wanted them to, obviously that does play into a player's decision. But most of the people that join Arsenal or spend time as a player at Arsenal, they talk about the atmosphere, they talk about the support, the fans, everything like that. It's been on another level this season, and most players are going to come into this, and within the first week they're going to get a chant made by obviously the red and white. They're going to be able to play at the Emirates at a top stadium for most of the games. Yeah, it's definitely a massive positive for the club, for the fans in general, but also, yeah, for the recruitment. And like I said, that does play into like Champions League fixtures at the Emirates as well. Like, that could be huge. Fingers crossed, obviously we get there, but that could definitely be huge for bringing players in of that high standard that we need to do to continue to build as a team.
Well, for fans to go and watch matches, they will be faced by some ticket increases next season. The majority of tickets all seeing the prices rise, particularly for those club level season tickets. But Arsenal have introduced a few measures to try and combat this. The new Emirates Home Advantage Pack Plus, that's going to be for 8 WSL games at a discounted rate. That does work out cheaper per game than the Emirates Home Advantage Pack. That's a 5 game package. That was obviously brought in last season, and those who had that last season will have the option to renew. Again, interestingly as well, fans who purchase the Home Advantage Pack Plus will have a priority to purchase tickets for away games, such as Everton, which I'm sure you'll have a word to say about that. But we've also seen Tier 1 and Tier 2 seating at the Emirates, where the sort of halfway line tickets, described as the best seats in the house by Arsenal, are going to be more of a premium price, really. Tier 2 is sort of the rest of the ground. A cheaper price. I never really realised until I put this article together for the Gooner just how many decisions really were available to fans. What do you think of it all, and what are you looking to do next season in terms of these Emirates fixtures?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we always knew this was going to be the case. I think some fans have looked at it and thought, oh, this is overly complicated. So it's really nice that we're able to talk about this and obviously get the article out on the Gooner to explain to fans. A lot of people want that broken down for them in terms of what their options are. I think a major one was the home advantage. Is it the plus one, where you obviously, that you were talking about with the away games? That is obviously a major thing that Arsenal must have been looking at this season, especially the Everton situation. We won't go into that again because we've had this discussion, but that definitely probably played into it. The demand for away tickets has been huge this season. I've been lucky to go to quite a few, especially the ones up north. So that probably did play into that as well. And I also know that they're moving the atmosphere block to block 10, which is obviously was a decision that had to be made because a lot of the fans wanted to join the atmosphere section to help that grow. And the club looked into that and obviously moved that over to behind the goal in block 10, where there'll be more room for more people to buy the season tickets. And obviously there'll be blocks around that as well, yeah, where people can buy those tickets. That'll be what I'll be personally doing. I sat in block 3, so I sat next to the atmosphere section, and I want to be a part of making that grow. And I do think that was a good decision on the behalf of Arsenal, the supporters club, to decide to move that, because it gets more fans involved, doesn't it? And it gets those who want to be a part of it, they can come and sit in that section. And if they want to stay where they are, they've also got that choice as well.
Yeah, I think more games at the Emirates will only see more of the atmosphere evolve and improve, which is great to see because the players certainly going to need that support. Just finally, then, two more departures today on Wednesday, both in the form of goalkeepers. We'll start with Sabrina D'Angelo, who was sort of brought in as someone who was really going to challenge Manu Zinsberger. And I have asked Jonas about it before. He said he didn't really see it as a number one and a number two in terms of his goalkeepers. This season, though, I think we have maybe just seen Manu pull ahead in front of D'Angelo. There's obviously talk of Daphne Van Domselaar coming in from Aston Villa and perhaps D'Angelo going the other way. The BBC are reporting. It's a move that probably is going to make sense for all parties, Daisy, but she is a very good goalkeeper.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really do like D'Angelo. I've enjoyed the games that she's played. I think she's the top goalkeeper, but I think potentially this was obviously a decision that she made as well. Like, she was probably thinking about first team football. Potentially, like you said, she had that chance when she came to Arsenal. She maybe thought, I can prove myself and become number one. But this season we've seen Manu play a significant more games, obviously, than Sabrina. So I think she's looking for first team football.
Mm.
Aston Villa will have a lot of decisions to make about their goalkeepers as well. Obviously, Daphne potentially coming to Arsenal. Then they've got Anna Leet, who potentially is leaving. So they really do need, and obviously there was Hannah Hampton previously. So they really do need that top class goalkeeper. And I absolutely think that Sabrina D'Angelo has complete potential to play as a first team player, especially at a club like Aston Villa. I think she could do extremely well there. And I think obviously if Daphne's coming in, it's probably going to be the same situation again with Manu, depending on how long Manu stays at the club following next season. But I do think Daphne Van Domselaar is a top goalkeeper, and definitely a very exciting transfer if that is to happen.
One thing this season, in terms of that rotation between Zinsberger and D'Angelo, is the two games against Manchester United when D'Angelo would look to really help Arsenal get on the front foot with those long balls. Obviously, she had that mistake which she made at Leeds Sports Village in the comeback draw in the end for Arsenal. I felt that really probably set her back because if that was a game, maybe if she did well in, she could have really staked a claim for herself. And obviously, she wasn't able to do that in the end. But if Arsenal do get someone, at Van Domselaar's level, again, Jonas Eidevall is going to have to manage these goalkeepers, and probably that's where something like Champions League football is maybe going to make his life a fair bit easier. But do you think tactically he's going to really pick and choose which game he's going to use for which keepers?
Yeah, I do, and I think he has always, especially this season, that might depend on who is available to him come the transfer news. But he has chosen Zinsberg on a number of occasions. Whether that determines her as number one in his eyes, I'm not completely 100% certain. But it definitely gives the impression that Zinsberg is his number one choice. So it will obviously depend on how somebody like Daphne or whoever it may be, if they come in, performs. I think if they get on the front foot straight away, that will make it more interesting, and it will be a case of who performs. I think for most fans, it's wanting to see that consistency, not just one player being given one game and then taken out again. It's about giving them 2-3 games in a row and seeing how they perform. Obviously, I thought Sabrina had played extremely well. It was unlucky that that mistake was made in that Man United game because, like you said, that could have changed if she'd got 2-3 games in a row. She could have definitely challenged for number one. So I think it will be a similar situation. And I think that's obviously why he's decided to make they've decided to make the decision on Kaylan as well, with a potential goalkeeper coming in this transfer window.
Obviously, Arsenal still have the youngster Naomi Williams, who signed her first professional contract last summer. So she's going to stay put, and Kaylan Marckese. Moving on as well, as you said there, perhaps the least surprising bit of news maybe we've had so far, only two appearances, her first coming at Zurich in the Champions League. Signing in 2022, another one whose contract is up at the end of the current season, and another who's had injury frustrations, a bad injury sustained away to Bristol City after 5 games. So the Robins this season, and another who will move on with everyone's best wishes. It's just not quite worked out for her.
Yeah, definitely, and that those things do happen, and it is extremely sad for the player, for the club. When a player comes in at Arsenal or at any club, you always want to see them do well. Injuries have affected multiple players, and I just hope that she gets back after her injury and she gets to go to a team where she's going to continue to recover from her injury and hopefully get back into first team football.
Well, whatever other news comes this week, I'll be right on top of it for the Gooner fanzine. We'll have our usual coverage on Saturday for the game against Brighton, live blog, player ratings, and importantly, we'll have plenty of video coverage for all of the post-match events. The game, as I understand so far, is going to be on FA Player, which means, make sure to drop both of us a follow on Twitter because we'll have the best angles for all of that post-match coverage, the interviews with players and Jonas, and all of the post-match ceremonies as well. It's going to be a fair bit to do. It's going to be a long day, Daisy, but hopefully a fairly enjoyable one as well. I haven't even really thought about the game itself. The fact we're playing Brighton, it's all off the pitch at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And at the end of the day, it does obviously change circumstances when a team is potentially just playing really without any real without anything really to fight for. But it is really about seeing those players off, ending the season on a high, and obviously the support that will be at Meadow Park for the players that have played this season and those that are leaving. It's going to be a really, really good game. And I'll be hopefully be able to get my tactical preview out so that we can look at both teams and see what we can expect from the match, separate to all the news that has gone on this week. What we can expect tactically from both teams going into that final fixture of the season.
Well, I look forward to that. Look forward to seeing you on Saturday as well. It is always an enjoyable one, the final game of the season. And hopefully we'll have you in the press box with me. But for now, that was the first episode of the Gooner Fanzine Arsenal Women podcast. I'm sure we'll have a fair bit more to talk about next week as well. So make sure to join us. Thank you for listening. Daisy, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a very good first episode.